Coming up in today's video, we take a look at part 3 of my 172 scale World War II German SS camouflage tutorials, which will focus on the famous Italian pattern. This technique is incredibly simple to follow, and as you'll hopefully tell by the end pictures, is very pleasing on the eye. Let me know in the comments if you'll be using this technique, and make sure to send through photos of your work on the Painting Panzers Facebook or Instagram page. Okay, so let's get this Italian pattern going. So to start off with, we're going to be giving the uniform a base coat of gunship green. So as always, I prime my models, or I put a dark shade color down of a really dark brown. I don't use black, I use a really dark brown. So for this, I think I use German camo dark brown from Vallejo. It's really up to you what you want to do. So the Italian pattern is something that's a little bit more unique for the Germans. So as you can see with the pictures popped up, that's the sort of scheme that we're going to be looking for, and it's really easy to achieve using this AK set. So hopefully if you're watching this, you're probably aware of what the Italian camo scheme would look like, or the Italian pattern I should say. But if you're not, this is another pattern that you might want to adopt with your late war Germans. I believe it was used by the SS and potentially the Wehrmacht as well. I could be wrong with the Wehrmacht, but I know the SS definitely used it. It was distributed to the SS units in Normandy, plus Italy, and then towards the later end of the war, the Eastern Front also saw a lot of it as well. So it was rather common, obviously not as common as your traditional SS camouflage, but it's quite common. So going back over that initial base coat, after we've put down our dark wash that we've just seen in that previous step, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to pick out the details. I'm going to be quite generous, so I'm not leaving too much of that dark color on. I want to use that darker color to act as a shade color for this green. So it's all about building up the colors. You're probably thinking, well, we're going to be putting down a brown and a sandy color later on, and that is true, but you want to make this green really pop, and at the moment it's quite dark even without putting on that brown wash. So we want to make this green pop, and it will really help later on. So now we want to go with a 50-50 ratio of gunship green and faded green. So this is all part of the Italian set that you can get from AK. The reason I'm doing this is because, as I said just before, I really want this green to stand out. So in order to get this green to stand out, I'm having to lighten the color slightly. So I don't want to go straight to faded green because it is super bright. So we're layering, we're building up to that eventual final highlight, which is really what you're going to be using just to pick at the small little highlights. So once that's done, we can now go to faded green, as I just said. So we're going to do exactly what I said. I'm just going to be picking at little bits here and there. It might be overkill. You could probably skip this step as well if you're thinking, you know what, this is just too crazy. I don't want to do this. I want to get straight into the painting, which I would not blame you. Sometimes I think to myself, what on earth am I doing, because it's taken so long. But the end product is what you're wanting. So if you want to have a huge smile on your face and think, yes, I've really achieved this and it looks fantastic, it's going to look awesome compared to my mates, then this is what you want to do. If you're thinking, you know what, it's going to look just as good anyway and I'm not too concerned, then yeah, there's certain steps you can skip. So now we're going with Hull Red. So this is going to be the initial part of the camo. So we've put the base green down. Now we want to start building up to that camouflage. So I'm using this brown and I'm not doing straight lines, alright? So let's pretend that this isn't Splinter camo, which I know a lot of you guys have been asking for, which I'll be covering in the next week or two. This is lines, or really thick lines, that are sort of connected to each other. So build them up, add little lines joining each other, but make them smooth. We don't want straight, thick edge lines. We want nice curved lines, nice smooth lines. So you're going to have to sort of play around with it, but you will get there, and just build it up slowly. You know, if you think you've done too much, then you might have to go back and fix it. It's better to start slow than it is to go too crazy. Now I'm going to highlight those lines with deep brown. So this is part of the kit, and I'm literally just putting in that lighter brown within the middle of those lines that we've just done then. This will just give it a bit more, it will make the brown stand out a little bit more, and it can also pop out some of the edges that are on the uniform and the creases, etc. Again, might be overkill, you might not need to do this, but I found that it helps. Now we want to add that more of a tanned look, so we're using middle stone to start off with, and they're like blobs that are in parts of the green, where the green would actually be, connected to the brown lines. So you're gonna have to look at your uniform reference photos for this one, guys, because it's hard to explain. But where the groove is bending, where there's some green showing, you can put blobs of this tan color in there, and they are just that. All right, they're just blobs, so they're nice and smooth. They're not sharp like splinter camo, so they're not got nice straight edges. These are just dots and blobs and whatever else. Not so much dots, I should say. They're thicker blobs. All right, so now to highlight those tanned areas, we're going to use light earth, and exactly the same technique as what I was using with that brown. I'm just highlighting any bits that stick out of the uniform, and I'm also building up that darker tan color to a lighter one, just so we can again get the whole uniform to pop. And we're going to bring that tone down a touch in a minute, so you might think it's a bit too bright, and we can easily fix that one. So the way we could fix that is by using a brown glaze. So as I've said in my previous videos, a brown glaze is a tint. All right, it's a brown tint. You can get a very dark tint. You can also get green tints, other tints, but brown is a good one for this type of camo because it's not too dark where you're going to wash the whole thing out. It will just tint it to a very nice light brown over the top of it, and it's perfect. If you can get your hands on it, doesn't have to be AK, it can be any sort of tint, but yeah, I'd highly recommend using these tints. Now I'm just picking out the buttons, so I'm using reddish grey from AK Interactive. You can use any sort of reddish grey, it doesn't have to be AK. If you want to see how I paint the rest of the model in terms of the webbing, the weapon, boots, I've got a couple of other videos in this series where I've covered Oakleaf and Pea Dot, plus I've done the Denison smock, so you can see all of that there. Now I'm painting the inner part of the hood purely because I'm making this just a uniform tutorial, so I want to make the inner part of that hood white because this is a reversible jacket, so he can go from having the Italian pattern to having just a pure white jacket. So I'm using the black just to clean up any of the mess, or the dark brown I should say, it's not really black. And then I'm going over it with deck tan. The reason I'm using deck tan is because it's like a whitish grey. I don't want to go straight to white. I want to put a first layer down of this deck tan, and then I'll put the white over the top of it so I can highlight using that pure white. Now I think for this model I actually used white grey because I don't want to go pure white because it might just be a bit too white for what we need for this. So once that's all done, you would then move on to the next step, which is what I was just talking about. You can see them in my other videos. Once all of that is done, this is the finished model or models. So as you can see, I've got quite a few that are building up in this collection. By quite a few, I think I've got 8 done, so it's more than I would normally do, and I'm sure many wargamers that might be watching this can probably agree with me. You normally start a project, then you stop, and then you move on to the next one, and then you get all these little models lagging behind. But I'm being persistent with this one because we're making an entire series. So Splinter is going to be the next one that I make up, and then I might look at the spring camo, and there's a few others that have been floating around, potentially moving on to Cold War and different nations obviously. So I've covered one of the British, mainly German, but I can move on. Let me know in the comments what you want. I'd love seeing your suggestions. Some are a lot more ambitious than others, but yeah, I'm happy to tackle most of them. But if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and like the video. And yeah, I really appreciate it, guys, and I will catch you guys at the next one. Thanks.